Rob Macleod. He's a political commentator based out of Ottawa, Canada, and he's on the phone. Hello, Rob. Good to have you back with us, sir.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Well, this has been a whirlwind couple of weeks. First, Justin Trudeau goes and visits with President Trump. Then the two of them get into a public spat, and now he's announcing his departure. What's happening here?
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting few weeks and months for Trudeau and the Liberals. I know the visit down in Mar-a-Lago was certainly the capstone, but certainly a tumultuous last month for Trudeau, as he had a number of outspoken cabinet ministers and caucus members coming out against him, releasing letters to the public requesting that he step down in the coming weeks, and it's finally come to a head.
So I know that there was a finance minister by the name of Chrystia Freeland who just resigned this past month. And she was citing, when she resigned, she was saying that Trudeau had unserious economic proposals in terms of how he was going to handle President Trump's threats of imposing 25% tariffs on Canada. Is it as simple as saying that Canadians don't believe Justin Trudeau is up to the task of leading the country and working with the United States?
Well, I think that's accurate to say, Vince, but I think also, hearing the dissent from within the party was enough to make some important decisions today. And I think a little bit of history that's somewhat interesting is, back in September 2021, the Liberals have been running with a minority government, being propped up, in fact, by the Democratic Socialist Party since 2022. Now, that agreement ended in September 24, and that's why now you're seeing this, these parliamentary games being played. That's why you're seeing some of the revolt in the caucus. That's why you've seen Deputy Prime Minister Freeland step down, and really has resulted in all of this.
Got it. So the coalition government that existed no longer does anymore, and he just doesn't have the support. What about the Canadian public? What do they think of all of this? I was citing some of that polling data showing that Trudeau's party is trailing the Conservatives by 20 points. That's a pretty big deficit.
Yeah, the polls are pretty stark when you look at it. And, even looking at now in the wake of Mr. Trudeau's resignation, you can see that, that the next leading candidate and next strongest candidate to succeed Trudeau would be Chrystia Freeland. But even her candidacy would have the party trailing Poilievre's Conservatives by about 15 points. So, regardless of who, assumes the leadership position with the Liberals, it's not looking great for them.
Do people like Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah, I think, there's certainly a sentiment that people do like Poilievre. I think his messaging has been quite clear and pointed. It addresses some of the most pressing issues I think that the Canadian populace is facing. But frankly, in Canada, we don't have a history of electing prime ministers in more than we do removing ones that we've kind of grown fed up with. So I think that's really what you're seeing here. And I think the Canadian population is ready for a change of color.
Do Canadians feel abused by the Trudeau regime? I think the last time you and I spoke was probably in relation to the trucker protests and what was happening in the country as civil liberties were being utterly trampled. Do Canadians remember that? Do they hold that against Trudeau?
They certainly do, and I think now what's more front of mind are some even more pressing issues. As you would have heard from Pierre Poilievre, we've seen some of the longest lines at food banks in recent memory. Homes are virtually unaffordable for the middle class. People are working hard and their dollars aren't going very far. So there's certainly a growing sentiment that people are ready for change in this country, and they certainly haven't forgot about what happened back during the trucker protests as well.
What about the remarks coming out of President Trump, including today, about this idea that Canada could be the 51st state of the United States? He posted today on Truth Social this afternoon, actually. Many people in Canada love being the 51st state. The United States can no longer suffer the massive trade deficits and subsidies that Canada needs to stay afloat. Justin Trudeau knew this and resigned. If Canada merged with the United States, there would be no tariffs. Taxes would go way down, and they would be totally secure from the threat of Russian and Chinese ships that are constantly surrounding them. Together, what a great nation it would be. How do statements like that from President Trump go over in Canada?
Well, I think there's certainly a group of my colleagues who are strong Canadian patriots who might disagree with President Trump's suggestions, but I think what he did was put an appropriate amount of pressure on the Prime Minister to make some important decisions and to ultimately step down. The threat of tariffs has been something that's been clearly front of mind across all stripes of government. And has really done a lot to bring government together in talking about how we can do things to, improve defenses, strengthen our border, and those sorts of things. So it's certainly making, the pressures being felt.
Yeah, it sure seems like it. So, Rob, if you were to assess it today, you think Donald Trump was instrumental in this decision by Justin Trudeau to resign?
Yeah, I would say it's certainly a part of it. I mean, as I mentioned at the outset, there had been some internal issues within the party. There have been some, revolt from within the caucus and within the cabinet. So, I think the outcome was inevitable, but maybe the remarks from President Trump had helped to accelerate things.
So, if the Conservative Party were to take over in Canada, how would that change the Canadian government? What would be the priority?
Well, I think if the Conservatives were to take over and have a majority government, they would be given a pretty clear mandate from the Canadian population. As Pierre has been touting in his speaking sessions, what you've seen is a real focus on housing, affordability. There's clearly an immigration file that needs some serious attention. And Canada has really struggled, frankly, to move into this value-added, innovation-driven economy. We've seen 8 out of the last 9 quarters of negative GDP per capita growth, and Canada's ready for some change as far as its innovation and economic policy go.
And if Pierre Poilievre were to become prime minister, I assume that what would follow is a pretty close relationship between him and President Trump.
Yeah, I think there would be a number of issues that they could align on right out of the gates. I think, addressing crime, addressing border security, building up our presence in the Arctic, offering some protection on that northern flank. There are a ton of opportunities that a Poilievre government and the Trump government could connect on and ultimately collaborate on.
Amazing. Did you ever think we'd get to this point where Justin Trudeau would announce his resignation?
We all hope, but frankly, I wasn't so sure we'd ever see the day. So I know a lot of Canadians are happy to hear the news. We're excited to see what comes in the next little while, but honestly, we're not out of the woods yet. So Parliament is prorogued until March. That means no important business will really be getting done. And when government returns, it's not to say that there will be an election right away. The coalition between the New Democrats and the Liberals could see this extend out until fall, until we see a federal election in Canada.
Okay. And then finally, did Canada ever get to the bottom of whether or not Trudeau is Fidel Castro's son? Do we know?
I think they're still working on that, but it might be a priority for the Poilievre government as they transition into power.
I can't wait to find out the results of that investigation. I'm just going to assume it until that happens. Hey, thank you very much, Rob Macleod. Great to talk to you again. Really appreciate your time today, sir.